everyone, I've made this little video to show you how to do some more complicated division sums that you might come across now. So you can see in the board here I've written some division sums that we would know in our head. So for example, 12 divided by 3 is 4, 25 divided by 5 is 5, and 42 divided by 7 is 6. And we know those because we've learnt our tables off really well. So I'm going to show you how to do a slightly harder sum today, and that is 126 divided by 6. And this isn't one that you would be expected to know in your head, so we have to use a slightly different method for this one. So I'm going to show you the written division method to work out the answer to 126 divided by 6. So the first thing that we have to do is put 126 on the board, and then we draw a little bus around it and the number 6 in front. And we work through from left to right to work out how many times 6 goes into 126. So if we ignore the 26 for now and we just look at the 1, how many times does 6 go into 1? Well, we know because 6 is bigger than 1, it doesn't go in any times. So we have to write down a 0 and carry over the 1. Then we just look at this column, and now we've got a 12. So because we've carried over the 1, it makes the 2 into 12. And we say, how many times does 6 go into 12? And because of our 6 times tables, we know 2 times 6 equals 12. So here, above this one, we write 2. And finally, we have to see how many times 6 goes into 6. And that's easy peasy, that is 1. So the answer to 126 divided by 6 is 21. And your answer ends up on the top of this little sum that we have drawn out. And we know the 0 in front of 21 doesn't actually mean anything. So that is our answer. I'm going to do another example now. So we're going to do 85 divided by 5. So again, we write out 85 first of all, making sure that we leave a little bit of space between the digits. Then we're going to draw out our bus stop, and we're going to put our divisor, or the number that we are dividing by, in front of it. So first of all, we have to see how many times 5 goes into 8. So 5 can go into 8 one time, and then it leaves 3 to carry over. Then we don't look at the 8 anymore, and we just focus on this. So because we've carried over the extra 3, we're now looking at 35. So we have to find out how many times 5 goes into 35. And because we know in our 5 times tables, 5 multiplied by 7 equals 35, we have to write 7 above that number 35. So 85 divided by 5 ends up being 17. I'm going to show you a slightly harder example now. So this time we've got 138 divided by 6. So we're going to write out the number 138, remembering to leave a little bit of space between each of our digits so we have room in case we need to carry over. And we're going to draw out our bus stop method. And then we're going to write in our divisor, or the number that we are dividing by, which in this case is 6. So first of all, we look at the 6. We don't look at the rest of the columns, we just look at the very first one. And we see how many times does 6 go into 1. And we know because 6 is bigger than 1, it doesn't go in any times, so we have to carry over the full amount of this number. Then we look at how many times 6 goes into 13. And we know from our 6 times tables that 6 multiplied by 2 is 12, and 6 multiplied by 3 is 18. And it's important to know both sides because we can't have this number fitting in completely. We're going to have another number to carry over. So in this case, we have to look at the one that goes before it. So 6 multiplied by 2 is 12. So we write 2 above, and then we have to work out the difference from this number and this number, which is 1. The difference between 12 and 13 is 1. So we just carry over the 1. And then we look how many times does 6 go into 18. So 6 multiplied by 3, we already remembered from before, is 18. So we write a 3 above it. So the answer to 138 divided by 6 is 23. I'm going to show you one final example to work through together with me, and then I'm going to give you a few questions to do by yourself. So 128 divided by 8. So again, we write out the number 128, making sure to leave a little bit of space between the digits. We draw the lines around to make it look like the bus stop, and we put our divisor, or the number that we are dividing by, in front of it. So that is what your sum is going to look like. Then, just as before, we work from left to right. So how many times does 8 go into 1? Well, we know 8 doesn't go into 1 any times because it's bigger, so we carry over that 1. Then we look and see how many times does 8 go into 12. And we know 8 multiplied by 1 is 8, and 8 multiplied by 2 is 16. So it only goes in once. So we put a 1 above it, and then we need to work out the difference between 8 and 12, which is 4. And then finally, we need to work out how many times 8 goes into 48, which is 6. 8 multiplied by 6 equals 48. So our answer to 128 divided by 8 is 16. So I've got 4 questions on the board here that I want you to have a go at. You can just use a little piece of paper that you have and pause the video here so that you can keep the questions on screen. So number 1 is 144 divided by 6. Number 2 is 160 divided by 5. Number 3 is 112 divided by 4. And number 4 is 168 divided by 8. So let's see how you got on with this one. 144 divided by 6. So the first thing that we do is write out 144, making sure to leave space between the digits. And we draw out our bus stop. And then we put in the number 6 in front. So first of all, working from left to right, 6 goes into 1 0 times, and we carry over 1. 6 goes into 14. Let's think of our 6 times tables. So 6 multiplied by 2 is 12, and 6 multiplied by 3 is 18. So we have to choose the one before it. In this case, 6 multiplied by 2 is 12, so it goes in twice, and then we're going to have some to carry over. So that's the difference between the 14 and 12, which in this case is 2. 6 goes into 24 4 times. So 144 divided by 6 is 24. So your second question was 160 divided by 5. So as always, we write out the 160 first of all. Then we draw in our bus stop, and we put the number 5, or the divisor, in front of it. So 5 goes into 1 0 times, and we carry over the 1. 5 goes into 16. Well, we know from our 5 times tables that 5 multiplied by 3 is 15. So it will go in 3 full times, and then we need to work out the difference between 15 and 16, which is 1. So that's what we carry over. And 5 goes into 10 twice. So for 160 divided by 5, you should have got 32. So your third question is 112 divided by 4. So we're going to write out 112 and draw in our bus stop and put our divisor, or the number that we are dividing by, in front. So 4 going into 1 doesn't go any times, so we carry over the 1. Then we need to see how many times 4 goes into 11. So if we think of our 4 times tables, 4 multiplied by 3 is 12, which is too big. 4 multiplied by 2 is 8, so we have to say that it goes in twice and carry over what is left over, which is the difference between 8 and 11, so that's 3. And then 4 goes into 32 8 times. So our answer is 28. So your final question was 168 divided by 8. So let's draw that out. 168 divided by 8. So first of all, 8 goes into 1 0 times, so we carry over the 1. 8 goes into 16. Well, we know 8 multiplied by 1 is 8, and 8 multiplied by 2 is 16. So we have to write in 2. In this case, there isn't anything to carry over. So then it's just 8 going into 8 one time. So our answer to 168 divided by 8 is 21. I'm going to show you one final example. So 252 divided by 7. So as always, we write out 252 first. We draw in our bus stop and we put the number that we are dividing by, or the divisor, 7 in front of it. So 7 goes into 2 0 times, so we carry over 2. 7 goes into 25 3 times. If we think of our 7 times tables, 7 multiplied by 3 is 21. And then we need to carry over 4 because we're thinking of the difference between 21 and 25. And then 7 goes into 42 6 times. So 252 divided by 7 is 36.